Alright guys, thank you for tuning in to the Rising Empires League Division 2, and we've got fresh noob stuff with Baboon 2.0 in the purple trunks as Mali, and his teammate Grigorov in the green trunks as Chinese, and their opponents today are big old giraffe here at the red Ottomans, paired with Vemos as the orange English. So we've got fresh noob stuff, FNS, up against big Monkas, BMS, with BMS with Themos and big old giraffe, FNS as Grigorov and Baboon. So Giraffe and Themos were successful in the first game over another pair of players representing FNS, and they've been swapped out here with Baboon and Grigorov. We're hoping to correct the record here. So we're on jousting fields here, which is an interesting 2v2 map because our players are more or less segregated from each other, from their teammate, and put directly against an opponent. So it's effectively two 1v1s going on here. So I wonder why Themos end up being almost 100 food ahead of everyone, but it turns out it's just because he's actually the only one not really overqueuing villagers here. The others seemingly queuing them up a little bit faster there. Their second one, you know, so it's 50 resources down the out of your bank, but you're not really actually doing anything with it. So we've got Mali versus English on one side of the map, and Ottoman versus China here on the other. Demos already going for that council hall. Found a good number of sheep, so he's dropping all them home. Actually not a huge amount of space to really scout here, but there seems to still be plenty of sheep on each side of the map here. So there's been a good job of scouting all the sheep along here. A lot of empty space here, very open map actually, in terms of like the 1v1ing. And I mean, you can cut through this in reasonable time, considering you've just got to basically take the forestry tech and then, you know, have a villager just slowly chop through all the trees. But it's probably not something we're going to see players do terribly early. I think everything's going to go into trying to rush your opponent as though it's a 1 versus 1 match for the first few minutes. And then players will possibly look at trying to link up with their ally, try and put the pressure on 2 versus 1, try and defend 1 versus 2 where their ally gets ahead. So Baboon going for Mansaquari. He's gone up to 6 houses there on the pit mine, so he's up to 87 gold a minute there. He's actually starting to bank a little bit of gold. Demos also doing the same. So the Barbican's going to finish up on the gold mine of Grigorov, and he shouldn't really have a problem with being able to get his Imperial Academy out as well to try and get that Song Dynasty, get the benefit of the extra villager production speed. Baboon is just getting what damage he can done to the villager here, but he's going to have to retreat. The scout will be able to regen, the villager won't. So big old giraffe trying to pressure Grigorov as best he can, but actually quite a nice, safe layout here for Grigorov. So fresh noob stuff, looking pretty safe. And it seems as though Big Monkus are trying to force something to happen here. In fact, there's another spearman headed out of that military school while it's been swapped to Sipahi for the free unit production. So these guys are going to have to try and track the long way around. Just keep tabs on that other gold mine, but sort of no real point because you know your opponent is on that primary gold mine. But I guess he's just trying to see if Grigorov is far enough away from the town centre to warrant sending the spears in against the villagers. He's sort of finding out that it's not really worth it. Warrior scouts for Baboon coming up. Going to try and force a fight against the English here, but he needs to be careful to not just have warrior scouts get bursted by the mass longbows. But Demos looks as though he's got enough defenders here. So the warrior scouts going to have to retreat. They can really only cop 1 or 2 bursts there. That scout getting very low, but it will regenerate through this. And it looks as though it will actually win the fight against the spearman with... No, it won't! It runs into the spearman who actually has 24 damage against the cav. But Zhugnu will be able to finish him off pretty easily. So there's not a huge amount of wood here for our players to gather. They will eventually have to work their way through here. And, you know, when both players on a certain team are actually gathering through here, it's not long before you actually chop all this out and you start to get more and more dangerously close to your opponent. To the other side of the map, to your opponents. So Baboon's trying to raid, manages to get one of the villages, and it's as the bulk of the longbows are crossing the map, so he's really only had to sacrifice 1 warrior scout for that. Or Demos. Looking to apply the pressure, but it'll take some time before he's in the Malian player's base. So Demos forced to have to throw down some walls, might even have to look at getting a barracks here. We've got Meta production. Well, a Meta has been produced here for Big Old Giraffe. Just going back to Sipahi production there. So he's actually got Meta drums for that free Meta, rather than necessarily going for field work or Anatolian Hills. Anatolian Hills is really quite nice because if you are going to do any mining at all, it ends up basically benefiting from another upgrade. The Big Old Giraffe's actually housed at the moment, so we need to try and get that house up as quick as possible. Baboon doubling back now, hoping to try and catch any straggler archers here, because he definitely has the warrior scouts to do so. Demos, on the other hand, is trying to deny the gatherers here at Baboon. Can even pick off an villager or 2 with his archers, but we've got safer production now for Baboon, so like a cheaper Age 2 knight. Not as strong as the knights of the Rus or the French, but they are a little cheaper, and they are still a heavy cavalry that you can get from Age 2. Now the warrior scouts being a real pain for the longbows to deal with, so it's perfect for Baboon. Rather than taking a fight against the main army, he's just trying to reduce the amount of backup that it's got. Big Old Giraffe starting to amass his nice mixed composition. Well, it looks like our China players just going for mass Zhugnu here. So Grigorov is safe to defend here until he can get Castle Age, if that's what he's going for. Actually, he's gone for a second town centre here. He's just trying it straight down next to the first. Now a couple more longbows of Themos has been picked off by Baboon. Looks like Grigorov not having too much trouble against the Sipper here as well. The Scout working as a good bait. The Zhugnu, only half of them are actually fighting now, so that's not the greatest of fights, but bearing in mind they are a bit more expensive, the Sipper than the Zhugnu. Even if they are training for free, in big old Giraffe's case, he's just not able to actually mass them up like you would like to. Getting some more archers as well. And Baboon's actually added a bunch of jab throwers. So this is a really nice comp to fight against the longbows of the English player, Themos here. And our player from Big Monkus has actually started adding some horseman production, while his teammate is adding some rams. So big old Giraffe is eager to try and destroy this Barbican. And there's not really any melee here for our China player, but he is about to start getting it, so looks as though Team Fresh Noob Stuff is looking to try and strike on the left side of the map and try and counter the incoming strike on the right side of the map. In fact, this has been a really nice boom here for Grigorov. He's managed to squeeze in Song Dynasty and 2 Town Center. And it looks as though he'll be getting this wall up in time, which will really prevent an easy flank here for big old Giraffe. Or Baboon. Raiding the villages of Themos is going to slow down that food economy, get a couple of villager kills out of this as well, 3 or 4 actually. So retreating there, and he's top score while Themos is bottom score at the moment. Big old Giraffe also slightly trailing Grigorov on score, so it's looking a little bit rough now for Big Monkus. Like the first game, where they seem to put on a bit of pressure and then just turn it into an increasing lead over the course of the game. I think the opposite is happening this game. The masterclass of Malians from Baboon. And big old Giraffe, I think, has sort of just missed his opportunities with trying to pressure Grigorov here, who's committed to a much more greedy build. And now it's starting to really pay off because he's got double town center with reduced villager train time up against single town center. And even though our Ottoman player has a lot of free units streaming in, I don't think it's enough to offset that. Village is also focusing down the ram. Actually going to come out the far side of the army. It's really smart of Grigorov there. Baboon hitting Castle Age. I think Themos is, not far off. He's getting his white tower. Well, over here, Grigorov committing to a granary and lots of farms. And big old Giraffe just sitting on that Ottoman feudal age for the time being. Neither of these players quite able to afford committing to Castle Age yet. While the white tower here by Themos. I said last game he got King's White Tower instead of King's Palace, and he really should have got it. But this game, I guess I can kind of agree with the sentiment of trying to get a White Tower, because at least he can gather from this gold mine safely. But it looks as though he's really been pushed off it now. He lost a couple of villagers for his troubles. And while he's on 1 town center, even though he is getting javelin thrower kills with longbows, which sounds a bit funny because normally the javelin throwers counter the longbows, he is sacrificing a lot of villagers to get this King's Palace up. In fact, it's going to have to be cancelled there and then. And that's not good for Themos, it's great for Baboon. While big old Giraffe has managed to sneak past Grigorov, he's just gone straight around the wall there. But it looks as though the Zhugnu should be enough to clean this up, even with the ranged armor. That Maida's going to have to try and get out of there now. And I think it's just going to get picked off, which is even more free value there for big old Giraffe. So it's, for Grigorov. So it's not been the greatest of fights there for big old Giraffe. Still got another batch of archers heading down, but I think this time he's going to want to be a bit standoffish. And maybe just try and hit the wood line here. Because bearing in mind, yeah, Grigorov, a huge commitment to the wood. Big old Giraffe actually has got enough units to really make Grigorov hurt here. He's going to go for outposts and villages and start bringing across his Zhugnu. Baboon raiding Themos all over here. He's got only 15 villages left basically. Poor old Themos. Really struggling to get to castle here. It looks like Baboon is well ahead on that top side. While over here on the lower side of the map, it looks like Grigorov is safe. He's got some towers up. Got plenty of wood gatherers over here. And I mean, with Song Dynasty China, he's just shitting out the villages relative to everyone else at the moment. But big old Giraffe, he's thrown away a couple of fights, taken a couple of fights he shouldn't have had, and he's just not able to keep replenishing an army here. So, Themos restarting his eco. His opponent with several times his villages now. Baboon. Really nice raiding now, adding more Sofa into the mix, so these guys can tank the town center a lot better than the warrior scouts can. But at the same time, at this point, he can pretty much just keep zerging his opponent with cavalry, denying gather time, sniping a villager here or there, and he's pretty safe just to work towards trying to help Grigorov here. So he's actually cutting himself a path so he can send some units in to support his Chinese ally. Because big old Giraffe's nowhere near as far behind Grigorov as Themos is behind Baboon at the moment. The Council Hall under a lot of pressure. And I don't think Themos is actually worried about producing units out of that. He's down to 8 villages over here and he's got a couple more. He's just doing a bit of a sad face with his wall off. Yeah, now I feel bad for him. Poor bloke. Yeah. Bit of a shame. Oh well. Someone's got to be the loser. Looks as though Baboon and Grigorov are just sort of waiting for Team Big Monkus to call it and tap out here. And if not, they're just going to send everything through and swarm Giraffe, because there's a lot of units here stacking up for Baboon. He's nearly chopped through to Grigorov, who's now getting a clock tower as well. So if you can get a nest of bees and have it supported by all of his own as well as Baboon's units, it'll be very hard for big old Giraffe to hold on here, fighting basically 2 versus 1. Grigorov going Castle Age. Big old Giraffe has already fit in Castle Age to fit in Mangonel, and hopefully he can try and fit in another before his opponents are pushing into him, but I don't know if they're going to give him that amount of time. Well, Themos, for lack of a better word, has been wrecked. So Baboon just going for a couple of rams, but he's mostly committing all of his new units over here because he wants to be able to support his ally. He's here to chop through the last row of trees there. Big old Giraffe going to try and pressure Grigorov, because all is not lost on this right side just yet. It will be once left side chops through to the right side, but for the time being, he can kid himself that this is still just a 1v1 over this side. It's a massive Chinese army relative to his Ottoman army. Now he does have man-at-arms in the mix, and there's not any crossbows out yet. So Zhugnu are definitely better than archers against heavy armor units, but they're not quite a crossbowman and not quite a janissary. Meanwhile, there is a couple of janissaries in the mix for big old Giraffe, but there's not really anything for them to be a nice specialist against, I don't think. Can actually do a wicked amount of damage against cavalry, but you know, the damage against regular archers isn't all that much better than the other archer units. And Demos been cleaned up now. So Baboon gonna come and support Grigorov now. He's got fast training, military campus, and meta drums. I wonder what he's going to bother going with here last. So he's selected field work, which at this stage of the game I think is pretty weak. You know, it's definitely good early, but 2 MMs this late on, I don't know if it's going to be the Hail Mary that he's looking for. Grigorov is pressing forward and it's not far. And sorry, Baboon is not far away. Demos surrendering there. And big old Giraffe, when he sees how many Safer are bounding across the hills, across the plains, GG. Team Fresh Noob Stuff takes game number 2 in the series.